I'd like to call the Board of Education meeting to order. Everyone will rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I am going to mention the protocol portion. I just want to mention that Pat Libro is unable to attend tonight, and Ian Heffernan is also unable to attend tonight. Is administering vaccines this evening, so she is otherwise employed. With that, would anyone from the public like to address the board? For a second time, would anyone from the public like to address the board? For a third and final time, would anyone from the public like to address the board? Seeing none present and we received no correspondence, the public portion is closed at 6:02. I will turn it over to Superintendent Bennett.
Thank you, Debbie. Just, I know from a couple of meetings ago, I think Bob had asked for a report, status report on Bailey in West Haven High School and some of the other projects. Ken is planning on being here tonight. I think he'll be here prior to me finishing, so I'll turn it over to him when I do it. I know Matt's got some information. First, I want to thank the board for extending my contract. It was unfortunately, I was really out of it 3 weeks ago at this time. You know, I didn't know whether or not you were going to plan on going forward with the meeting. I appreciate the fact that you did, and I appreciate the unanimous support. It really means a lot to me. You know, I love my job. I love working with this board. And I look forward to the next 3 years. I think we've got a lot of really exciting things in the pipeline. I'm looking forward, working towards a return to normalcy, where we can get most of our events back and get back to a regular school day and all the activities. But it means a great deal to me that you've expressed your confidence in me, and you know that I will continue to work as hard as I worked from the day I got the job. And again, I still have a lot left in me, a lot left in the tank. And I think we've got a lot of nice things going on, not the least of which is finally seeing this high school project to completion and getting Washington School off the ground, which I think is going to be a really nice project for that neighborhood. So thank you. And thank you, by the way, for many of you have texted me and called me and asked how I was doing, and I appreciate that. It means a lot. Again, for a couple of days I was out of it, but I'm bouncing back, and I'm almost at 100%.
3 weeks ago, you didn't say you had it. You still had it left in the tank.
Oh, 3 weeks ago the tank was empty. I needed to be pushed. But again, I think there's a lot of nice and exciting things going on. You probably know by now that this Thursday and Friday, we're going to a remote learning day. I believe we have about 300 people going for vaccines on Wednesday. So we canceled our professional learning development. Yep, second dose, which, we know that there's a lot of reaction. We know that there's been a lot of school districts that have done that. My preference would not have been to do that going into the break, but we just didn't see another way around it. We're going to do what we can to get through this week. I talked a lot to the teachers. Several got their first dose on Sunday 4 weeks ago, and they were scheduled to go yesterday, but naturally being Easter, they were then rescheduled. So they're throughout this week. So we're going to do what we can to get through Wednesday, and then we'll do what we can remote learning wise. And what we basically asked is, like in the old days when teachers left their sub plans, if they can't get online, have something ready to go for their classes. Again, there was just no. In fact, today we were scheduled to have 10 bus drivers go, and Craig called me on Friday and said, I can't do 10 bus drivers. What if they get a reaction? So we were able to move them from today to Wednesday. I mean, that would have really shut us down. So again, we've got over 300 employees. from all jobs, teachers, bus drivers, paraprofessionals, scheduled for Wednesday. We'll do the remote learning, and hopefully what we'll do is when we come back on May 3rd, Marissa Akampora had suggested that as a date. We're planning on extending the day for an hour. That gets all of our teachers and employees 2 weeks past a second shot. You know, for the last month, is it worth it? I think the answer is yes. The weather's going to get a lot nicer. I'd like to get the kids outside. I'd like to return to some, you know, again, if we can get some activities in, end of the year activities in, we'll be able to do that. The teachers actually came to me and said, you know, Bailey and Carrigan, can we get a tent for them? Or maybe Washington and Savin Rock, where they don't have play areas like the other schools. So we've actually ordered tents so they'll be able to have some outdoor class space. We'll utilize our cafeteria tables. We're still not going to be serving lunch. In the elementary schools, we've worked out a plan where we'll be able to feed the kids during the day. The teachers had asked in return that we try to free them up every day. I don't know if all of you know, but at the elementary level, they don't have prep periods every day. I think it's 8 out of 10 days. And I feel pretty strongly we'd like to do that. What we're working on is getting some of the college kids that we had during the Christmas break and their winter break. So we'll be able to do that. One of the things, unfortunately, that we lost this year at the elementary schools due to some of the shortages was collaboration time, where the teachers got to work together and meet together to discuss curriculum and how things were going in general. We had to lessen our data teams. Some schools couldn't do the early intervention. So we really are going to work hard to try to put those periods back. The teachers really make very good use of that time. And if we can give it to them at the end of the year, we'd like to be able to do that. But again, Marissa had suggested May 3rd. We talked about doing it when we came back from the April break, but it just seemed to make sense. Like if we don't have to quarantine staff, even if there are some cases amongst the student body, we'll be able to run the schools. As you know, you've seen a lot of letters lately, and again, it's due to quarantining and shortage of staff. So once we get beyond that 2 weeks, again, with the weather getting nicer, the kids will be able to get outside. Hopefully we'll get some outside activities in, and we'll be able to have it, again, get back to a more normal conclusion of this school year. And as I said, we really would have liked to have done it earlier, but you know, every time we tried to, we saw a spike, and we were quarantining teachers and kids and staff. So again, I think it'll be a good thing.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
So after the second shot, and excuse my ignorance, but after the second shot, if a child in the classroom has it, the teachers do not have it?
I don't believe they have to quarantine, which I think is a good thing. You know, teachers don't have to quarantine. That will, again, that's going to keep us open. Yep, absolutely.
Thank you.
So just to be clear, I think you might want to double check or have Jill or Marissa double check that. I think it's 14 days after the second shot, you're fully immune.
Well, I think that
So it
takes
would
us.
be within the 14-day period, but after the 14 days.
Well, again, if most of them go this Wednesday or this week, May 3rd gets us next week, and then I think it's another week after we come back from the break that we'll do it. That's why we believe she picked the date of May 3rd. We're in the process now. In fact, I could have Matt pass out what he's passing out. We have to, and this is really, really important. We have to apply for that first round of stimulus funding. That's the $9 million that we were expected to receive at the beginning of the year. There's actually a formal application, which we believe we're going to get most of what we asked for. And I think it was Bob that asked for an update budget. So this is where the money has, most of it, a lot of it has been spent and committed. I wanted to again emphasize that we didn't get an increase in the Alliance grant. We're still getting the Alliance grant, but there was no increase. So some of the funds are going to be put aside for that. I also wanted to tell you that this Thursday, It's via a Zoom meeting, but we are going before the city council to talk about our budget. And that's one of the things that we are going to emphasize. We're a little bit concerned that, there's not pools of money out there, and we're not sitting on, for example, $20 million for the next round. Right now, there's no time frame on that, nor do we know if something is going to have to be supplanted as a result of that $20 million. But as Matt and I have said to you, when we asked you to pass our recommended budget, we'll be fine next year. But long range, when you start relying on this type of money, there's cause to be concerned. In fact, I read an article on East Haven the other day. They had asked for about the same amount of percentage of increase that we did. Now, they're an alliance grant. Again, I think they're being, they and we need to be a little forward thinking to say, okay, we can make it this year, we'll be okay next year. But, maybe you want to think about altering that 5-year plan and give us some smaller increases in order to not fall so far behind where funding is cut, and the next thing you know, you got to make up a $2, $3, $4 million shortfall because the funding has been cut. Again, I think in West Haven, and being an alliance district, they're always going to pay special attention to us. But I also think that there's a perception amongst, and I've talked to some of them, the city council members and some of the people in the administration. We don't just have $20 million that we have to quote unquote play with. Some of that money may need to go to fund, programs that we're already operating in order to keep them operating for a period of time. The other thing that we're currently working on with Matt and Marissa is is summer programs. A big component of, and many of you probably have seen it on the news, Senator Murphy, Senator Blumenthal, Congresswoman DeLauro, they're very, very interested in what are we going to do in the summer to reacclimate kids to, recreational programs and get them socializing, and what kind of educational components. We're working on that now. We actually met with our athletic department today. We have a meeting with the community house tomorrow to put those types of programs in place. And we've got some, very, very good ideas. The issue may be staffing. It's hard to get teachers to commit to, over the summer, but I feel like our coaches have the opportunity to run some camps, and if we can give them give them some kind of academic component that we can pay for. Those are the kinds of things we're looking at. Today, when we met with Joe, we talked about maybe a mandatory meeting with some of our players and high-risk groups with the guidance counselors over the summer to look at things like credit recovery, which I think is going to be real important, to look at NCAA clearinghouse rules. Then there's the other end of the spectrum where we're going to see kindergartners, many for the first time, because they've been out of school. And what we're thinking about are programs like extending summer school, or maybe if we can't get all the staff we need, some kind of open drop-in center where we can work with kids and get them socializing and following school rules and those types of things. And we're certainly not unaware of Carrigan and Bailey, and the kids in the middle grades. We know that we have probably our greatest challenges ahead of us and may not know what all of the needs that we have are until the kids actually come back to school. Rosa?
Neil, if I may add, I think one of your biggest considerations should be the mental health aspect of our students as well. I know from personal experience myself that our kids have suffered greatly during this pandemic. And I know at Bailey has, 2 school psychologists, or maybe just 1. But that's not going to be enough for these kids. Okay? The challenges that they have undertaken in this last year has begun to reap its head. And I think as a board, I think as parents, I think as educators, we need to keep their mental health a priority.
Some of the things we're looking at, Rose, are three areas. We are looking at additional social work help assistance. Again, a lot of it is going to depend on when is the money coming and how is it going to be spent. There's definitely room for additional staff, not the numbers, again, that we when we first saw the numbers, we said, wow, we're going to really be able to load up and maybe give every grade an additional teacher in order to offer support. But, we are looking at EL services, extending them. Those numbers aren't going down, and there's always a turnover. We're looking at social workers for social emotional help. A lot of that will depend on, who's out there and who's available. The third component is I would like to see, especially here at West Haven High School, a change in maybe how we deliver our guidance services. What I would like to see is, not that they don't do a good job, they've done a really good job. In fact, again, I'll put what we've done up as far as contacting parents with our administrative team and our guidance people and keeping track of kids. Maybe an additional guidance counselor. I would like to see a bigger connection between the guidance counselors and what's happening in the classroom. Because I think that sometimes guidance counselors may be aware of social workers, yet that message isn't getting to the teacher worker. Like, hey, did you know why so-and-so hasn't been doing their homework? They got a lot going on in the home. And again, I think the biggest thing is, I think those kinds of issues that you're talking about, we're not going to know how deep they run until the kids actually return to school. As I've been kind of saying that to our administrators, we may think we know where our holes are, but when the kids come back and they're behind in certain areas, we may say, we've got to adjust. Maybe now we've got to go out and get extra personnel or whatever. But I don't think you're wrong. I think that's kind of the direction that we're going. By the way, we've got, just so you know, we've got good, we've got a social worker in every building. We've got 2 at Bailey. We've got 3 at Carrigan. That doesn't include the school psychologist. So we're pretty good. But again, I think for the challenges that lie ahead of us, we're going to need more.
Especially in those age groups.
Yeah, in fact, I don't want to, I know there's a couple of questions, but one of the things that tends to happen is, we spend a lot of time with the elementary schools, we spend a lot of time with the high school, we tend to overlook Bailey, so it's certainly an area that, we want to see, what do they need? Because those kids are coming in, maybe after not being in, and then we got to get them ready for high school. And if they're not successful right away in high school, the chances of them, if they don't progress after 9th grade, of graduating decrease dramatically. Andrea, did you have a question?
I did. Distance learning will still continue after May 3rd?
After,
May 3rd?
it's going to be an option. What I've seen though for next year, I don't know what the plan is, but I have seen a recommendation made by CADE, CAPS, and all of the big groups is that it not be an option unless obviously there's some kind of an emergency situation. That would be my hope, but I know the governor, the recommendation was going to the governor who wanted to sit down with some of the unions, but for the remainder of this year, yes, it's an option. In fact, just on a side note, I talked to Craig Winkle today. The New Haven high schools started, and we normally send 5 large buses into New Haven to drop off at the various magnet schools, total of 11 kids. So, the chances, I think, of getting kids back, especially in high school now, aren't great. And I think the way to get them through the years, we have to do that. Again, one thing I think we really have done a good job, and I've said this, and I've complimented our administrators and our teachers, and I've told you this, is that we have been able to, whether it's in-person learning or distance learning or creating packets, we've done a remarkable job. But we don't have the numbers that Haven has. They're talking like they've lost contact with 30% of the kids. They've got much different challenges, but we're over 95%. We can tell you where all the kids are. We've done a really good job with that.
And then I just have a second question is on Thursday, will that be Zoom on a, you know?
I'm sure if you go to the city's website and the council office, it has to be public, similar to what we're doing. Rose?
I don't know if I misunderstood you. With the Alliance grant being flatlined in the city being flatlined, did you say that you would have to take money from the COVID relief money to fund programs that we won't be funded with the increase?
Yeah, not this year. This year, in fact, we anticipate a surplus, a small surplus. But next year, we're gonna have to supplant some of that money. Yes.
You're talking about 21, 22.
21, 22, yes.
Well, what happens, I mean, shouldn't that be brought to, you know, the attention?
That's gonna be, again, Matt and I talked today, that's gonna be the theme, and, you know, similar to what we're telling you, you know, again, I've heard you guys got $20 million. Well, that could be $20 million over the next 5 years. There are gonna be limitations. We are gonna have to submit a plan for the money. So again, we wanna make them aware that we don't have $20 million. What we need to do is, or we need to plan better, and again, small increases over time. And you've heard me say this, it's really, really important.
We need to make them aware that this COVID money is not to shore up existing plans, it's to institute new programs and institute fixes for the problems created by COVID. So, we need to be very clear with this.
Yeah, no, and again, we talked about that. That's why I wanted to talk to you today about it, to let you know about Thursday, and to say this is going to be, the point that we're going to continue to hammer home.
I also was under the impression that with that money that, municipalities will get, that there are restrictions, and would you be penalized for using it for existing programs?
So Rose, no. When the governor passed his initial budget, when he flatlined the Alliance grant,
Which is currently, it's not finalized, but I don't see it all through too.
it was basically his suggestion to use these funds that are coming in the second round of CARES Act to close any budget gaps that may be presented with the Alliance grant pause in the increases.
I don't know, it just makes no sense. I don't understand.
I know a lot of organizations like CASBO and CAPS are reaching out to the governor. We sent form letters to our representatives saying that he should rethink that strategy. But I think with the money we're getting the next 2 years, we'll be okay. I think down the road it could present some challenges.
That money for the kids that need it, or whether it's what Rose was talking about, mental health, or they need help academically, or we need better ventilation.
I think there's certainly ways to address all areas of need with the amount of money we're receiving in this round of funding. I think we're gonna have to spend the money smartly, because we know that the money runs out eventually. But I don't think we'll have any areas of need that won't be addressed within the next several years.
Remember, we talked to you about where some of our money go. We at the beginning of the year, we spent a lot of money on HVAC, getting all of our fans in order, certainly PPE. We did things like the Haley space, and got here, and he can even update you on some ideas that we have and some of the projects that are out there. Even the tennis courts. We use the Alliance funding grant for that, but that creates more outdoor space for gym classes. So we've worked pretty hard, and we've worked pretty smart, but I don't disagree with you. Again, I do think that there are some unknowns. Like I'm very reluctant to create a lot of jobs, for example. Because we're not going to hire people and then lay them off. We don't want to do something like that, or we find something that's very successful and then we're forced to stop it. There's no more questions. I'm sorry, go ahead. I was going to have Matt kind of just summarize for you. I'm sorry. Well, in their 5-year plan, we're supposed to be flat funded every year. Now, again, if we got the increases in the Alliance grant, okay, we could live with it. But, you know, there's no reason, you know, 5-year plans, whether they're capital improvement plans or whether they're budget plans, they're projections about what may happen. I mean, there's a lot of things you can't predict. You adjust the plans accordingly.
I just think that constantly, year after year, give us nothing. This is the way.
No. And again, I mean, that goes to, you know, Bob. I mean, we were kind of, Bob, we had widened that gap on those charts and we were starting to get it a little bit closer. And now, what do you think is going to happen? You're going to see a big bubble in city funding, state funding. And, you know, again, I believe that, you know, the state understands the plight of cities like West Haven, like East Hartford, like Meriden, you know, all of the big cities. And they're not going to let us drown, but by the same token, you know, it's up to the municipality to kick in their fair share as well.
You know, and to go back to what we're talking about that gap, I think it's on us, Board of Administration, to make sure the city, the council members here see exactly what the year one loss of funding is in dollars and cents, and a hard number and a percentage. Take that year 2 and let them see when year 3 comes around, really what the number is going to be. That numbers go astronomical. That in year 3 or 4, when they try to look at what needs to be replaced. I mean, they're looking at this number now and think everything's good. But all you do is create that gap. Right?
Absolutely.
And eventually, you're going to have to pay the bill. And now you're 3 years behind what you need to come up and fund.
Right, so we asked for funding of around $1.6 million. For next year's budget. Basically, all of that was contractual increases. So to project out, you know, based on the contracts, you just have to multiply that 1.6 number by how many years it calls for the raises, and that when this fund goes away, you're going to need the entire amount of money to be able to have a balanced budget. So,
Right, we put that in a budget book amendment. Excuse me. I think we need to show that to them on a regular basis instead of just every spring.
I agree with you. I also think that's why it was important, you know, to ask for the percentage that we asked for, because what we did when we presented to you and then you recommended to the city a budget, this is what we need to operate the Board of Education. You know, I mean, we could say we don't care where the funding comes from, but you're going to run into the issues which Bob just described.
I think that I'm assuming because of what happened, we may have gotten a little bit ahead of taking care of the HVAC systems. Now the question is how do we fund that to stay ahead of the HVAC system?
Preventative maintenance is always an issue.
That's something that's not been very good.
Absolutely.
For the city in general. But we got to this point now, let's not fall back. Let's find and fund the plan to keep our stuff maintained.
So I think the good thing about all this money coming in is that we were able to spend so much money on HVACs to fix the issues, upgrade the systems, and now we could actually use our operating budget to maintain that instead of how we've been using the operating budget to fix what's been broken.
I'll take a good example. Let me give you a really good example of that. So, you know, we were very fortunate because we're an alliance district to receive the laptops for all of the computers here. We had ordered computers here that we passed down to the primary grades. Originally, we started with a grades 3 to 8 plan. Now, again, what we've been able to do is because we didn't have to order, we were able to pay off a 3-year lease in 2 years. What we're planning on doing, Bob, is we're going to sit down with Business Network Group and say, okay, since we've got computers, where do we go next? Do we go to Promethean boards? You know, some of our administrators in offices may need new computers. You know, let's just not do something for a year. Let's take the opportunity to fix things that we ordinarily wouldn't have been able to fix and put us in good standing, you know, down the road. If there are no other questions, I know Ken has arrived. But again,
I just have one suggestion, not related to the budgetary situation, but when we were talking about things for over the summer, with kids, especially at the high school level. And maybe Mackenzie can offer some insight on this, as far as prepping for college or the job market or whatever you're gonna do after high school. I'm not sure, I know we do a really good job of trying to engage those kids that are, with Naviance and with their guidance counselor, but I think there's so many more kids now that I have had conversations with, ages of my kids' age, that maybe are not getting parental guidance. And to be honest, going through it for the first time with my oldest daughter, I didn't have any guidance from my parents to go to college. My dad was a fireman, my mom was a housewife. So going to college, I kind of just winged it and figured it out on my own. And I think there's a lot of kids in our school system that,
And
don't
Kevin,
have someone helping them fill out their
And that-
FAFSA and
and add to that, we've done a good job with that, and add to that, the kids have not been in school for a year and a half, and there's not that connection. Yes, they're calling you, but it's not the same as seeing the kids. I will tell you, Dana sent me a recommendation, which I've approved, for additional guidance counselor sessions over the summer. That's not taking into consideration some of the higher need kids that we may need to reach out for and do more than once. But we're not unaware of that, and I think that the problem is worse than what you're describing, just because of the nature of the pandemic and kids not being in school and not having a clear direction as to what they want to do, missing out on so much. They can't say, I really like going to this class or trying this or.
And the worst thing that I've heard from multiple kids in that age group is that I'm not even gonna bother because I can't know where to go. And knowing their financial situation at home and how much a resource would be available to them, they're not in the bracket where my kids are, where we don't make a ton of money, but we make too much money to get any money. You know what I mean? So we kind of had to figure out, lucky enough to take loans and whatever. They're in a bracket where I know that there's funding available for them, but they just don't know it.
Kevin, I'm living it now. I mean, I was a senior in high school, and she said, no, really, and I had the means to send it to college. I feel like we did a lot on our own. He's our third child, and we kind of know what the routine is. But I think that's happening all over the place. I don't think it's just the public schools. I think, the private schools. I just think that, because of kids staying home, of remote learning, not being as engaged or involved, I think that's going to be quite a challenge that we have to re-engage kids to focus. And I think also, go back to Bailey, I think that's where maybe we need to start having those more serious conversations. Not that you got to make a decision in 7th and 8th grade, but if you have a direction, hey, if you want to be an engineer, then you really got to specialize in these math classes. Or you want to go to the medical profession, yeah, you could take just the regular required science classes, but you also might want to consider, whatever, So I think that's going to be critical over the next at least couple of years, but something where we always should be trying to improve in understanding, what likes and interests kids have, where they want to be, what are the obstacles, like finances first and foremost, that are going to keep them from reaching their goals. I think you're right on the money.
And I consider myself a fairly capable adult, and I struggled the first time going through.
Absolutely.
How to navigate that system, what you can take a loan for, and what you can't take a loan for, and all those things. I can't imagine
I also
being unprepared myself, trying to help my kids.
I also think there's a lot of inexpensive options. I think Gateway is very viable if you have an understanding of what you want to be. There are great programs at Gateway. What I get concerned about when kids say, I'm just going to go to Gateway and take a couple of classes, I'd be willing to bet against that kid being successful and actually coming out of there with an associate's degree. However, if someone goes in there and says, I want to go into the nursing program or culinary program or some of the other automotive program or some of the other really nice programs, there's a better chance for them to be successful because there's a goal at the end of you know, when I leave here with the diploma, even the certificate, because they have programs where you don't have to get the full associate's degree, I'm qualified to do something. You know, and I always say that then you start your job and you take the next step and say, now I can go back and take a couple of classes, or maybe finish the degree, or go on to get the 4-year degree, and those kinds of things.
I think it's important for those kids to know that are interested in the tech and trade industry, that those programs are available. You know, I've heard kids as well that they wanna, you know, they wanna become a plumber, but, you know, they did go to Platt and now they wanna be a plumber, but there's nowhere to learn to be a plumber, or they find out, oh yeah, you can go, but it's, you know, $6,000 for 10 months schooling. You know, I think they don't know the reality of what's available and what they need to do.
And again, it's nice to say, I want to be a plumber, I want to be a teacher, I want to be a whatever, tradesperson, professional, whatever. But here's what it takes to get there.
Yep.
You know, this is the skill set you're going to need, because a lot of kids, you know, you would be, you know, an auto mechanic. An auto mechanic is known a lot about computers and math and science now. You know, it's not just going in and, you know, getting your hands dirty. You know, they need to understand you can do it. You know, you've got the ability to do it. But this is what it's going to take. And these are the courses you have to take. When you're in high school, you know, maybe you want to take a science class or a physics class, or something that's going to help you, even if you know, even though you're not planning on going to a 4-year college. I think those are the things that, you know, we especially in this climate have to look at and really say, you know, we understand you missed a lot of your high school experience, but, you know, look, let's get you back on track. And, you know, what do you want to do? What are your interests? You know, you're short a couple of credits. Maybe you got to take a summer school class if you want to graduate with your class.
And I just want to make sure that I was clear that I think that the guidance office is doing an incredible job in an era of uncertainty for everybody. So I was certainly not trying to cast any aspersions on the job that they do now, but I'm worried about what's going to happen in the future to these kids that, you know.
Let me say it like I said.
We don't know what's going to happen.
Like I said to them. I think they're doing a good job. I think the job is going to be we got a different job. We got to look at it a little bit differently.
Speaking on that topic, I think also we should just dump all the responsibility onto just the 6 guidance counselors that our school has. I mean, we have over 1,000, probably closer to 2,000 students, just for those 6 guidance counselors to look over with. This past few years, we've had an essay success class. I think might be beneficial to maybe do college prep or a career prep class as well. Just because even I still am so clueless about what I didn't even know that was really a huge option for me either. So I think that was very.
I think that's a valid point. We're also looking, again, I think the challenge I gave to Dana and the administrative team at the high school is I'm even willing to add counselors, but I want it to look different. I'm not quite sure, 100% sure how I want it to look, but come to me with some ideas of how we can better reach out to kids. And I think that we do need to increase the number of.
I mean, there could be an opportunity for professional development as well for the teaching staff. As far as, you know, you have a kid in your class and you realize that they're doing really good at one of these skills. And the other thing I think my kids struggle with is like, what kind of job can I get? What jobs are there? You know, you know, Megan's going for radiology tech, so it's very defined. What do you want to do? She wants to do that. I was an environmental science major. She's going to be a junior in college, and she's still like, I'm not sure exactly what job I can get. And I'm not sure that any of us do a really good job to educate the kids on what jobs are available and something that they're interested in. You know, I'm struggling with my own kid with that. Like, what kind of job can you get with that degree? I know you love the environment and you love science, but where are you going to be able to make money doing that? You know, so if teachers can point out to kids in those specialty areas that say, like, you know, wow, you're really good with, you know, these math problems, you know, architecture, you have to figure out these kind of things, or, you know, carpentry, or
I think you're right.
engineering.
That's
Maybe you want
where
to
I
think
said
about
it.
that. And they probably are already doing this, and I'm preaching to the choir.
Look, I think that's where there needs to be a better connection between the counseling department and the classroom teachers. that's something that, again, I'm pushing the high school to do, and they started that process. But I think that, again, it's two ways, hey, look, there's some things going on in this kid's life. However, I also think that, this kid's really shown me that he's got some skill in whatever it may be. And by the way, I mean, I've got a daughter, my middle daughter, didn't know what she wanted to do. She had a degree in psychology. She, worked a couple of jobs and then decided after a couple of years, with a bachelor's degree, that now it's time for me to go get a job. She's getting a second bachelor's to be a nurse. So I think that's also happens, that kids, at 15, 16, 17, up to 22, 23 years old, you just don't know what you want to do. You don't know what you're good at. And I think a lot of times it does come together and, hey, this is where I should be, or this is what I was meant to do. But,
I'm also a super sophomore who's on her fifth major in college and
that's okay. I think a lot of it is trial and experiment and no, this isn't for me, or I didn't realize that I was gonna have to do this if I wanna be that,
That was my long-winded way of
No,
saying.
listen, I think this was a really good discussion, and I think these are the things, we got a lot of administrators here tonight, you're hearing, your concerns. I believe we're doing a good job of addressing a lot of them. I think we'll be able to show you what we put in place in the coming, weeks and months prior to the start of this school year. Because we understand those are exactly the things that are happening right now. Again, given the pandemic and given that kids haven't been in school and miss out on a lot.
I just had two other things that if you're going to turn it over. Sure. Very quickly, one of the things that I had talked to you about a couple of years ago, and I don't think we ever really talked fully about it, was another school that I had, actually might have even been Notre Dame. They have like a end of sophomore year, junior year project, beginning of junior year project in their English classes that they actually write their college essay in their English class. And I think that would be a great idea to incorporate into our curriculum for our students, because my kids both struggle with writing a college essay. And so they actually have it as like a graded project from, sophomore year into junior year.
It's something that I like to see, and I think they're doing some things like that. I can let Dana talk to it, and Colette is here as well. We've also, don't forget, put, I don't know the title, Tracy Acarulo's position, where she can help work with kids on the essays and things like that.
Well, that's good. Miss Acknell Brendan with hers, actually.
So we actually just kind of instituted exactly what you're talking about with Tracy Acarulo, and she is like the college essay guru.
She helped Megan.
Yes, she's amazing at it. So part of what we did with her job was we took her out of the classroom for certain periods of the day, and she was working directly with juniors and seniors just on the college essay. So that became part of our curriculum. Then when the pandemic hit, unfortunately, we had to shift our focus a little bit to the distance learners. So now that, and really since probably before Christmas, all of our teachers are live streaming the distance learners, and we've slowly been kind of reinstituting what she was doing. COVID, like it did with so many other things, definitely gave us a little bit of a hiccup with that program, but we are doing that. And to address one of the other things you were talking about, we've definitely started to really kind of work with Naviance and our counselors, giving kids a career focus. And I think that what you said is spot on about what kind of careers are out there. And I always tell the counselors the story of when I first started teaching, the kids would ask me, why did you want to be a teacher? And my answer was always because I didn't want to be a lawyer, a doctor, a nurse, or an astronaut. So I knew if I didn't want to be those things, kind of what else was there? And luckily I love teaching, but I don't feel like I knew what else was out there. So that's definitely something we're focusing on with the kids, trying to get the word out with them about what all the different career opportunities are. Val Cosenza, who works in our nursing program, does an amazing job talking to kids about all the different careers in the medical field that are not a doctor or a nurse or something that a radiologist or a phlebotomist, things that are so well known. So we are trying to take that concept, what she does, and expand it into the other fields. So that is something we're focusing on.
Well, I'm thrilled to hear that you're doing the essay. And I'm only repeating it a little bit because sometimes I have trouble hearing on the
Sorry, I'm talking about it.
So I'm thrilled to hear that you're doing work with that essay program. I think that's great. And that was the reason I became a nurse, because I didn't want to wear a business suit and high heels. So that's why I went to nursing school. So the reasons are insane for what you do when we're on.
My father used to say I became a teacher because it's the family curse. Teacher, and my aunts and uncles and several teachers, so.
And then the other question I had for you was, did you want to talk about the SCC conversation that we had?
Yeah, so I know that Kevin and I talked about, you guys all know this is a really unique year because there were no state tournaments, but our teams were very, very successful. I know that Mackenzie and the other guys announced, what we wanted to fall. Our winter teams were really successful. Our girls basketball team was a runner-up for the SEC Division II finals. Our girls co-op hockey team won the SEC finals, and our boys basketball team won their first SEC championship. So we were really successful. And by the way, my little commercial for that is maybe being in school and keeping the doors open and requiring that kids come to school led to some of that success. I'd like to think it was, but we talked about what could we do for these kids. They missed out on a lot. We want to be able to make it up for them. So Balfour, some people had talked about rings and they were kind of expensive, but Balfour, who sells class rings and diplomas and those kind of things, they kind of made us an offer we couldn't refuse. They gave us 50% off on the rings. So we said, okay, how could we pass that deal up? So for any team that was an SEC champion, we are going to purchase them the rings as long as they can stay under that $200 mark, but it's 50% off. And again, with what these kids missed, I think it's a small token that, we can give them, memory, because they missed out on a lot.
Thank you. Do you have a question, Rick?
I'm sorry.
We good?
Just speaking on your SEC thing, we are recognizing our SEC winners, which is our boys cross country team, our boys soccer team, boys basketball, girls hockey, and our girls runner-up team as well, which was girls basketball. We'll be recognizing them this Wednesday morning, which is actually happening.
Thanks, Mike.
A lot of projects to go over. I'll do as quickly as possible. Starting with this project, the high school, it's going extremely well. The state is coming down to do a visit. They're very happy with the pace and the budget. If you look at the high school budget, you'll see we're carrying about 1.6 million in contingency, and Gilbane is carrying about 1.3 million in contingency. So very healthy contingency. We plan on delivering the E and F wings to the Board of Ed late July or early August. The C wing will be gutted over the summer, and the B wing will be completely demolished by the second week of October. The remaining asbestos work schedule will be put in writing and sent out for everyone's review, and the plan right now is to get a waiver so the gym can be used without interruption throughout the entire process. The solar fields on the roof are complete. I've got some pictures in there for you, and it looks good. We're projected conservatively to save $21,100 a year on your operations budget as a result of those solar fields. Moving on down the list, the West Haven High School tennis courts have been refurbished. We're awaiting the final lines and markings, which will be an epoxy type material. They said they have warm weather for that. The nets are up and some temporary lines are there for use.
The Bennett rink seat replacement project is completed. That was completed about a month ago. And there's some photos there in the back showing you that. The Washington Elementary School build as new. We have written the RFQ and we have written the RFP for both architectural and CM. We also have the full support of the mayor and her staff to move ahead with that project, and it looks like the council is in full support of it as well, as I'm sure you guys are. That will be going out to bid in the next couple of weeks. The Bailey Middle School bathroom project that's a refurbishing of the bathrooms over at Bailey, and that is going to be a public opening on April 8th at 2 p.m. We've gone through the bidding process, we've gone through the mandatory walkthrough, the RFI process, and on Thursday at 2 o'clock will be the public opening for the bid for that work. The Bailey Middle School roof project is 90% done. If you go by Bailey, you'll see the crews are working on the coping, and you'll notice the coping is now going in a different direction. It's no longer horizontal, it's vertical, and that gets rid of all the unsightly seams that the old coping brought to the table, and it looks much better. Okay, we have two colors there as well, to sort of outline it, make it a little nicer. Carrigan Intermediate School Garage Extension Project. The project was awarded to Link General Contracting through a low bid process. $223,000 was the number, and that work will begin in April. One of the difficulties in achieving that garage extension is the trusses. The trusses take about 12 weeks, and you cannot measure for roof trusses until the block is up and built. So there'll be a long delay in that project, but we're trying to work through it the best we can. Materials have not only gone up in price considerably across the board, but they're very difficult to get. The Carrigan Intermediate School Lighting Project is complete. We're hearing a lot of good things. You go over to Carrigan, teachers, administrators will tell you, and kids, that it's a much better environment with the lighting that was installed. The Savin Rock Community School HVAC replacement project is in the soft cost phase. We have put out to bid the mechanical engineer, and we've got those bids, we're reviewing them now. We were directed to install bottle fillers at various elementary schools. Unfortunately, so was the rest of the country, so we can't get bottle fillers. We did find one for Pagels, and we will start with Pagels, and that should happen in the next couple of weeks. Interior lighting replacement projects for Haley, Savin, and Forest schools. The UI has informed us that we are now at an 80% threshold for grant money for new lights. That means the UI will outright pay 80%. With that, we've targeted the 3 needed schools for new lighting, and they're doing an impact study now, and we expect paperwork to move ahead in that fairly soon. The solar projects. We are waiting for a green light from the UI by April 9th. At which point we can continue with our permitting process. We have the rooftop Bailey Middle School solar array. We have one in Carrigan, we have one at Malloy, and we have the Malloy ground array. The UI has approved everything to date with the exception of the ground array. They're thinking it might be too large for that facility, so they're thinking of shrinking it just a little bit, and we will find out more about that hopefully on the 9th. And the final project is the Bennett Ring Carport. I've got some great pictures there for you. We actually have an opportunity to install a solar carport. They come in, they build the carport for free. The ring could buy solar from those panels at a very reduced rate. We would get a drive that would go around the solar carport. It's tall enough to accept the bus, and that's probably about 45, 50 extra parking spaces that we presently don't have.
I first thought that said carpet. I was like, where's there a carpet?
Expensive carpet. So, does anybody have any questions on any of the projects? Which one? Oh, yes, I did. I'm sorry. So we have an opportunity to grab some money from the CCA to remove all of the asbestos on the second floor hallways. And there's a little map there. When I did the color copy, the fourth hallway did not copy well, but all 4 hallways, the asbestos tile will be removed, and we put in a VCT tile. The administrators over there have coordinated a color, so they can say to kids, you know, you're on the yellow wing or you're on the blue wing. They have that color bleeding into each of the rooms, so it's easy for dedication and what to do. And we expect that to happen sometime late June, early July.
CDA.
CDA, I'm sorry. CCA is the job I did today on the Maven. The homeless shelter CCA, got in my head. CDA, my apologies. Yes.
Question, are you surprised that they took this long or
No,
not really?
they're actually on schedule, and in fact, there was a little delay in getting them paid. They never stopped work. They had to work second shift, which made it a much longer job than if they were working during the day. They were working during a difficult weather time as well as under lights they set up. So they couldn't get the full crew there at night for safety reasons, and there's just not enough light to do it. They're working on the coping now, which is a much smaller crew, but the actual roof part is done. So we're doing the coping.
As far as high school, there'll still be construction going on here. People come back in August.
Yes, we are not going to finish the job until August, September of next year.
Is that probably about a year behind schedule? Finished?
No, we're right on schedule. If you look at we started late, but once we started in 17, they gave us a schedule and we added those 6 classrooms, if you remember, and that impacted the schedule. We also added 2,500 square feet onto the cafeteria. Had we not changed that plan, you'd be sitting outside right now where you are. And we're right on schedule.
For some reason I thought I had kids will be coming back to see. I thought it was going to be finished. I would see no construction in season.
No, what's going to happen is when they come back, they'll see very little construction because the F and E wing will be delivered and done. All the furniture will be delivered. And then we're heading over to the C wing to put the extension on that. And then we have a lot of hardscape to do. We've got a lot of paving to do, more sidewalks to put in, things like that.
This is the last year we're occupying old space though. So when the kids come back, there'll be no more old space to occupy. So they'll come back to a new building.
Sure.
Can we use that money for anything else for the high school?
When you take state dollars, $1, I counted it. There are 58 regulations that we have to adhere to. And they've got you boxed in all over the place. You would think that if you save a lot of money on the project, you've got a bonanza. But the reality of it is that if you don't stay with the educational specs, they will not reimburse you. So right now, we have roughly $2.8 million. We have some more difficult things to get through that could eat up some of that money. If you remember the last time I was here in January, I gave the board a page and a half of things that we added back into the project. We're pretty much tapped out at this point. We even were able to get this patio in behind you here, for outdoor dining. We've added everything that we can possibly think back into the project at this point. There's going to be money going back. Nothing that would be reimbursable. So the danger is that not only would it not be reimbursable, but you could be penalized for it. That's a problem.
So would that impact the amount of money that we would need to bond for to pay our portion as well? Is it
Yeah, so what happens
does
is
it match up?
when you get a credit money back, the city gets a 25% credit. The state gets a 75% credit on the dollar.
So it will decrease the amount of money also?
Correct.
Okay,
100%.
that's good. Spot that number.
That's right.
Can I ask you a question? All goes well. When did you see a shovel on the ground for Washington?
Washington would be, we have to start the job to maintain the grant a year from this coming June. Now that start could be a small start like we did at the high school. We came in, we did $260,000 in asbestos work in the tunnels just to keep the grant. Something like that could happen. We have about a year and a half of design work to do at Washington. You've got the compliance end, which is even your local compliance requires zoning, fire, building. You've got all your state compliance. So my suspicion is I suspect you're starting within, 2 years, and then it's a 2-year project. That's my guess. Yes, sir.
You figured out a way of finding a way to fund the lighting for things.
The lighting for,
Tennis.
oh, tennis court. Yeah, so we looked at that. We actually don't have any power out there. There's not enough juice to do lighting out there. It's not something that the grant would cover. And we'd have to bring in a line off the street, get the UI involved, another telephone pole, huge dollars to do that. All we have is a small tail down there going over the bridge to feed one last light on Educational Way. There's no juice to put lights out there without a major infrastructure project.
Chris, can you run an extension cord from the football field?
No problem.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah. We have a lock on the fence there. We have wind screening coming that they still owe us. My understanding in talking with the people, you know, the AD and stuff, it's all tennis.
Jim, so you know, we agreed, you know, remember the city maintained that, that was their property. We said, we have this money, we can go forward with this project, we did use the Alliance grant money for that. But in exchange, we want to maintain. Now maintaining, they mean locking it up at certain times of the day, at night, taking things down. You know, as much as I like to see the kids play roller hockey and things, that'll ruin the surface. You know, we were looking at, and still are, by the way, there's some possibilities for relocating a small roller rink, maybe even over at Painter Park, again, depending on how some of the COVID money works out with the city. It's in some joint projects and joint things that we were talking about prior to, we don't know what our status is going to be, so we don't want to commit the money, but those are possibilities. But yes, I think that they need to be 4 dedicated tennis courts, and our varsity players and our gym classes, that's the primary use.
That's been the discussion from day one, that there was going to be tennis. We got extra high fencing there. We've got the lock on the gate. The dog park has moved to Veterans Park. You know, it's going to be all tennis.
Tennis season is over sometime, you know, like November or something like that.
It's locked up.
Come down.
That's come down the street, yeah.
Locked up.
That's our understanding.
Yep. I think settle this money. I'm not against it, trust me. But you can't have a hockey, playing hockey out there.
Nope, totally agree.
Ken, what are we gonna do with that lot across the street there? Is that eventually gonna get paved, or once construction is over? So I know there's like vehicles in and out of there.
Yeah, so if anything happens to that at the very, very end, no definite plans. We've had some engineers look at it. Unfortunately, the land has not been surveyed, and it's very close to a water, you know, course, if you will. So there's some challenges there, but we're looking at that.
That was going to be our, we really thought it was going to be a roll, but there's you know, a roller hockey rink, but there's some challenges there. It's actually more expensive than the tennis court.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ken.
Any other questions? You guys have a great night. Thank you.
Neil, did you have any more?
No, I think we gave you a lot of information. Again, I think the important thing to take away is Thursday night, you know, talking to the council about, you know, where I think we stand financially now and going forward.
Thank you. Student reps, Mackenzie.
Come in. That's all the shots.
Okay, can you hear me? Oh, yeah. So last week I brought to you guys a concern about the student parking lot, and I just want to say thank you because we did get a guard out there, and I think that things have gone way smoother since then.
You're welcome.
We also had a very successful peer advocates Easter egg hunt this past week, as well as the class of 2022, which you're sitting in your audience right now, put on a very successful in-school Easter egg hunt, which the students really enjoyed. We want to let you know that the spring sports season has now started, which is why I'd like to apologize for my lateness. We did have a game that just went on, and it's been going pretty smoothly.
There's the game though.
And that's so that's right, over that learning stage. And there are some new rules, so in case any of you do happen to go to the game, spring sports, especially because they're outside, are allowed to not have a mask on while playing. However, specific to lacrosse, if you're playing in a tight area, for example, taking the draw, in case any of you know what that is, you do have to wear a mask and you have to wear one on the bench and when you are practicing. Next thing is there was a email sent out to you about a drive-by, so make sure you're looking in your email for that information. We had a few questions just about the upcoming schedule change, which will happen, I believe, May 3rd. So with the schedule change, some students believe that is a little bit inconvenient because of the end of the year and are a little bit concerned about AP exams. For a lot of students who are distance learning, they have to actually come in school for student exams, and they're a little bit nervous about possibly getting quarantined before then and not being able to take their in-person student exam. Would that be, we did have that answer that they will have makeup exams, but we just wanted to make sure that that was still an option, in case any of you know anything about that. There was another question about teachers being vaccinated. That seems to be the reason why we are going to the 4-period schedule. However, some students, not as many parents, but mostly students are concerned with the fact that they are not getting vaccinated and that we have seen a spike in cases in the past few weeks, specifically in students and not in teachers. If any of you have any comments about that.
I have a comment. One, we think that Connor's got an appointment April 23rd, no people's son, so we know that kids 16 are undertaking that. We know it's hard to get them now, but they can start with the age of getting vaccinated. Our goal is to stay open.
Yeah.
If a student is quarantined, they can move to distance learning pretty quickly. But I think making sure that the staff is vaccinated is going to allow schools to stay open. You know, it's easy for the kids to transition back and forth, especially the high school. I think they've really done a good job. But as long as we can keep the doors open, that's going to be our goal, and it's been our goal all year.
And we appreciate it.
Listen, you guys have done an amazing job, you know, again, and, you know, I know that sometimes it's, oh my God, I can't believe I'm quarantined.
Yeah.
I really want to be in school. But as long as we can get the staff quarantine, our feeling was, you know, kids can move back and forth much easier. And again, you know, they've opened up the portal. We also understand that kids aren't going to be vaccinated tomorrow.
And then another question that we had was about, with the possibility of distance learning not being an option for next year's school year. Especially in the high school, we have very low numbers of students coming back compared to the elementary schools and middle schools. And we're just wondering if you have a plan on how to convince not only the parents, but also the students on why it would be a good decision to come back full without distance learning next year.
We're hoping it's not an option. That would be the easiest thing, if someone says to us, you know, higher up at the state level, that all kids must return to school. You know, it's not required to offer that option.
Okay.
You know, you're right. For kids who've been out of school for a half a year or a year and a half, it's not going to be that easy to get them to return to school. You know, in fact, we've had cases. One of my big concerns over my career is I've seen kids who start with attendance issues very young at the elementary level, and they lead to doctor's notes for, you know, having to stay home and get, you know, getting one-on-one tutoring and those kinds of things. And they never seem to get better when they come back to school. The longer you stay on, the harder it is to get back.
Yeah.
So it really is our hope that, and I think it may happen, I know there are some committees that are going to recommend that to the governor, that unless there's an emergency situation, the district shouldn't be required to offer them.
Mackenzie, I also think it's a good idea. I think we found anecdotally that people are more apt to get vaccinated when they have talked to someone that they know and trust that has been vaccinated. So that's one way that you guys, and maybe with the peer advocates, can work to encourage kids 16 and older to get vaccinated with their parents' permission, obviously, but also to come back to school. You can say like, well, I came back to school because this, and this, and the real, you know, the benefits that I had from coming back to school were this. So a peer-to-peer interaction, I think, is probably one of the most effective means of convincing someone to do something that you have done when they see that it has benefited you in some way.
You know, I agree with what Kelly's saying, but I also think that's why it's important, even though it's only for a month, if we can extend the day and get back to normal, you know, more of a regular day, I think we'll also be able
hasn't been done on. So, yeah, there's an academic piece,
Yeah.
but there's also, we really want to give you some things back that you've missed. So, work Bennett's date, the schedule, and she's got everything figured out to the second, down to the second. But, getting you back in school, getting everybody back in school gives us things and times to meet with guidance counselors, to meet with kids, and do all the things that, we haven't been able to do. So I think we're going to be flexible, but, we feel like it's really easy for a more length of the day.
And yeah, even talking this morning, we appreciated that we're trying to go back to normal, but we also talked about working with teachers to make it more accommodating to quarantine rules. Since it is coming and adding an extra period, it is an extra period, at least in my experience, that I couldn't get quarantined from. And going into senior year or into my senior activities, it's not exactly the most ideal situation. So we did talk about possibly communicating with teachers about reworking student charts from the past that we made it so they've had 12 feet in between teachers and students, but now with the teachers getting vaccines, possibly making that a little bit of a shorter distance, so that way we can make sure that the students themselves are distanced a little bit better. So that's what we're doing on our end. Thank you for your comments and taking in our concerns. We also had a concern about the mask break schedule. However, Ms. Curtis did inform us on how that was going to be. And if any of you are wondering on what that is, I can always send you an email with that schedule.
That would be great.
We did have a high number of cases in the past week. However, we have dealt with it pretty swiftly, and we're working towards making sure that number does get lowered in the future. Let's see. The other thing was on to Kevy's comment about career paths and college searches. I was informed that College Board has teamed up with Road Trip Nation to do a college search, and that we are going to try, as the Board of Ed, to try and communicate different ways in different apps that students can help with their college search as well as their career search, since I do think it is very hard, especially experiencing it. I feel bad for the class of 2020, but I do think that the class of 2021 was probably hit most hard through this with the college and career search. So we have a few different ways of trying to get those students involved with different career paths, and we have a great career center here that I don't think students know too much about. So we're going to work really hard to make sure that they understand that there are many options available. That's all I have.
No, that's not what you have. Okay. You have an announcement to tell us, since your partner's not here, and he would probably congratulate you on your recent award for hockey. Would you like to tell the board?
I did get SEC Player of the Year this year, but I'm not the only player who received that. One of our basketball players, Mr. Duncanson, also got SEC Player of the Year for basketball. It's a very good year for Wesleyan athletics.
Jim, did you have anything?
Yeah, just quickly, several months ago, I was talking to Neil Met with Wesleyan Traffic, Police Department Traffic Division, about the car speeding up and down on Bailey Middle School there on Morgan Lane. And there was some flashing lights on both sides of the school, and we talked about it, possibly getting the lights, flashing when the school's in session, and doing a few other things. And one thing or another, I guess there's problems with the UI company about getting keys and, a couple pickups along the way and stuff like that. But the day nothing's happened. And I'm just, I know it's the end of the school year now, stuff like that, get close to the end of the school year, but I'd like to maybe send a letter out to the traffic division if we could and find out, exactly what are the plans the coming year, as far as, I'm afraid, an accident happens, someone gets killed or something like that, because cars are flying up and down, 7 o'clock in the morning, out there all the time, I see it, and school gets out and stuff like that, so possible to get a letter from Neil.
I'll reach out, I'll get a letter out, but also reach out to Patrick or two, contact me.
Okay. Yeah.
Thanks for that, Jim.
All right.
I just wanted to say congratulations again on getting your contract renewed unanimously from the board. Everyone did make comments that they wished that you would have been well enough to attend because they wanted to praise all the hard work that you have done over the past years as the superintendent, and how much of a struggle this year has been and how successful that we have been under your leadership during the COVID crisis. So I just wanted to say congratulations again and make sure that you were aware that the board had expressed their support and praise for your job well done.
Again, thank you to all the board members, and I appreciate those that, reached out to me and, told me all the nice things that were said. My only comment is, I thought it get easier at the end, and just not, who could have ever imagined.
Who would have
This
thought?
stage of my career, we'd be dealing with the things we're dealing with, but, again, I still enjoy my job, and I look forward to working with everyone here for the next 2 years.
Thank you so much. Next, we have D1, approval of minutes from the Board of Ed meeting on March 15th.
I would like to second that motion with an amendment though, on the front page. With all due respect, Jim, you weren't here.
So we'll just correct that attendance amendment.
All right.
All in favor with that amendment?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Oh, any abstentions? Jim? Thank you. All right, motion passes. Next we have D3, 21-08. Motion by Rosa, second. By
I
Andrea.
know Joe is here, I just want to clarify, that job, that's been a position that we've been trying to fill for
Yeah,
most
that
of
was
the
an
school year.
existing position that was open, that Judy and I worked very hard to try to find a person, and we finally did find someone, and she's very good, so we're happy. But that's, I think to Neil's point before, that's gonna be for next year with positions, it's gonna be a difficult situation, so,
Thanks, Joe. I'm glad I found somebody.
me too.
You just need to vote.
I did we do?
I just wanted to.
All in favor? I don't know if I said all in favor.
I just wanted to comment, make the comment.
You threw me off my game.
No, I'm sorry.
Aye.
All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. On D4, under new business, we have 21-09, EB-009, Connecticut State Department of Education Agreement for Child Nutrition Programs. And as it reads, pursuant to CGS Section 10-21(5)F, the Board of Education or governing authority certifies that all food items offered for sale to students in the schools under its jurisdiction and not exempted from the Connecticut nutrition standards published by the Connecticut State Department of Education will comply with the Connecticut nutrition standards during the period of July 1, 2021 through June 30th, 2022. This certification shall include all food offerings offered for sale to students separately from reimbursable meals at all times and from all sources, including but not limited to school stores, vending machines, school cafeterias, culinary programs, and any fundraising activities on school premises sponsored by the school or non-school organizations and groups. And I'd like to entertain a motion to approve.
A motion to approve.
Second by Patrick. Any discussion?
Thank you for reading that, because you don't know, if it's not read properly like that, we have to go, Tammy has to spend a lot of time going back and forth with the state, so.
I got cut by Amanda and Tammy, so thanks.
Thank you, Amanda.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, on 21-10, approval of the the Connecticut State Department of Education Child Nutrition Programs, ED-099, Healthy Food Certification Statement, Consideration 2, exemption for food items. The Board of Education or governing authority will allow the sale to students of food items that do not meet the Connecticut nutrition standards, provided that the following conditions are met. 1, the sale is in connection with an event occurring after the end of the regular school day or on the weekend. 2, the sale is at the location of the event. And 3, the food items are not sold from a vending machine or school store.
An event is an occurrence that involves more than just a regularly scheduled practice, meeting, or extracurricular activity. For example, soccer games, school plays, and interscholastic debates are events, but soccer practices, play rehearsals, and debate team meetings are not. The regular school day is a period from midnight before to 30 minutes after the end of the official school day. Location means where the event is being held and must be the same place as the food sales. I'll entertain a motion to approve that.
I make that motion.
Second,
Second.
by Patrick, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. The rest of the agenda is informational. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Second, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The meeting is adjourned at 7:00.